It's a real pleasure to welcome back Tom Sherwood as part of the ongoing strand of lectures and conversations that he created for us. This is the third edition of, in the words of the larger-than-life Tip O'Neill, All Politics is Local. It's a thrill to introduce Tom Sherwood, a reporter for News 4, specializing in politics and DC government, and a real time person. He's always on time. I thought you were going to be late, but you weren't. It was a miracle. Anyway, and an even greater pleasure to welcome his guest this evening, Ronald C. Machen Jr. Is that right?
That's right.
U.S. Attorney. I promoted you earlier to the Attorney General, but U.S. Attorney
Not
for
yet.
the District of Columbia. So the format is that the lads will be in conversation, and then we'll open it up to Q&A, but there's a twist. We have index cards and golf pencils. If you have a question, just raise your hand, and we'll hand out the index card, write it down, and then Tom will take your questions. So thank you, Tom.
Okay, thank you. And we're being, this program is being recorded, right? By that, which looks like a camera right in front of us? Okay, but the audience isn't, so you don't have to pay that much attention. Well, good. Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you, Mr. Machen, for being here. Is the microphone going to be down here so you can get every word?
I'm usually pretty loud, so.
Okay, that's good. We're going to talk to Mr. Machen tonight about his career, his crime calendar, and corruption, probably in that order. Let's just start first. You're from Detroit, and you went to Stanford, excuse me. But tell us a little something about you. A lot of people don't know who you are. They know you're the tough guy prosecutor, but they don't know you. Were you born in Detroit? Did you grow up there? And how'd you get to Stanford?
I was actually born in Philadelphia, and my father, we lived in Philadelphia. My dad was a professor at Cheney State. He used to commute from Philadelphia to Delaware. My mom worked at a school. She was a teacher. And then my dad got a job at Ford Motor Company, so we moved to Detroit. And then my mom ended up working for a subsidiary of Ford. And that's how I moved to Detroit.
And you were good in school and you got into Stanford? You go on a football scholarship?
I did. No, I walked onto the football team. I didn't get a scholarship. My parents were, they always focused on education, and so they emphasized that. My sister and I both did pretty well in school, and I was able to get into Stanford. And
So
once you
Marco,
go out there and
is
visit,
Marco?
there you go. Yeah, you've done your homework. That's right.
Just want to be sure. You might have two sisters. Okay, good. And you played football. What did you play?
That's right, wide receiver.
Wide receiver. Were you any good?
I was good in high school. At least I thought I was.
All right. Well, let me ask you a couple of football questions. NBC commentator Bob Costas and others have said they may not allow their sons to play football because of all the concerns about concussions. I think you have two younger sons, right? Would you let them play football?
They do play football, and not only that, I got an older boy. I got three boys, and my older boy just finished
He's an
playing.
adult, so he can decide on himself.
Well, he just finished playing at Georgia Tech, so a few years ago. So, yeah, so all of them have played football, and my dad played before me, and so. But the concussion stuff is something to be concerned about.
Parents should at least think about it. Yes. And while we're on football, I got to ask, any views on the Washington football team and whether it should change its name or not? I know you didn't expect any of these questions.
Well, I guess all I can say is it certainly is something people should consider. If as many people are offended by a name as has been indicated, I think it's something people should think about. But I really can't pass a view one way.
Do you agree with the President of the United States that if you were the owner, you would consider changing it?
I mean, I think it's something to think about. It's something to talk about.
Okay. You've been active here in the Washington community for quite a while, particularly as the U.S. Attorney. You frequently speak before groups, particularly young people, many of them disadvantaged, many of them poor, but many just typical young people in town. What do you tell them? They look at you. Do you show them a badge? Do you have a badge?
I do. I have credentials.
Do you have a badge you could show us?
I have credentials I can show you, but no, I don't.
You don't have like a
them.
big shiny badge?
No,
I don't
no,
see
no.
nothing else
You don't
matters.
want to see anything else. All right.
I mean, I want something that would impress me. So what do you?
Well,
I thought wouldn't that impress the young kids?
I don't think so. Not these kids. I mean, we did this today. I was out at Oak Hill today, speaking to a bunch of young folks out there who are in a program with the National Guard, and I've tried to speak at every high school. And we just try to tell the kids to make good decisions. It's been unfortunate. Since I've been the U.S. Attorney, we've prosecuted over 200 juveniles as adults.
That's about a 4-year period now, coming up on 4 years.
And many of those individuals were convicted of crimes where they're going to spend over 20 years in prison. And what I tell the young folks is it's terrible. It's terrible that they've hurt someone, sometimes killed somebody. It's terrible they've thrown their life away. And I want them to make good decisions so we don't have to see them in that courthouse.
You didn't mention it, but snitching is an issue. You've said in the Friendship Baptist Church with Pastor Michael Little a couple of years ago, you said citizens have to stand up and participate in law enforcement. But then Pastor Little said at your meeting that people boast about not snitching, not because they're proud, but because they're scared to death. Is that a problem in town with getting crimes solved? People who don't want to snitch, not because they think it's cool, but they're afraid.
It's a tremendous problem, and it's not just a D.C. problem. It's a problem throughout our country. Witness intimidation is real. It happens. I will tell you there's nothing we take more seriously in our office than somebody trying to intimidate witnesses, because the whole process will stop. So we have a victim witness assistance unit in my office. It's made up of 25 professionals, and their job, besides providing witnesses with services and victims with services, is when there's a real threat to try to protect witnesses. But what people don't understand is if you don't stand up, if you don't talk, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be safe. The crime is going to continue. We've had certain cases where people didn't talk to us, but the people that committed the crimes didn't know that, and they were still targets where people went after them. So the community has to stand up, and it takes courage, and it's not easy, but that's the only way to move forward. And far too long in certain parts of this city, we've seen people that have not stood up and not participated with law enforcement. And so one of the things we've really tried to do is make sure we're there in the times of calm. We do a lot in the community so that when that tragedy strikes, they'll already know us. They'll know our faces. They'll know we're there. They know we care, and that helps people come forward.
I'm going to get to what your office does in a moment, but you were nominated in December of 2009, I believe. Is that right? By the president, President Obama. And Eric Holder, back in 2008, asked you to help vet the vice presidential candidates. So
I don't think Eric Holder did, but I did.
Well, he was in charge of the vetting, so all right. Maybe somebody he knew asked you. Right. But now you've been blessed not to be involved in the rollout of Obamacare, so I'm not going to ask you any questions about that. But what was it like vetting vice presidential candidates? Did you vet Joe Biden?
I don't want to talk about any specifics, but
that would be not the first time he says that. I don't want to talk about any specifics. Somebody in the audience keep track. All right, go ahead. One.
But again, with vetting, you're just trying to gather information about individuals so that an informed choice can be made about whether somebody would be a suitable candidate. So as a lawyer, that's what we do. We gather information and analyze it, and so that's what you do.
We're not naming any names, but did you knock anybody out by?
Now, I was a low man on the totem pole, so I didn't knock anybody out at all in any regard.
But you're a former assistant U.S. attorney.
That's right.
But when were you the assistant U.S. attorney, and who was the big cheese?
So I was hired in the U.S. Attorney's Office by Eric Holder. So I was hired at the end of '96. I started serving from '97 to close to the end of 2001, a little less than 5 years. I served under Eric Holder, and then Wilmer Lewis became the U.S. Attorney.
And what were you? What division of the U.S. Attorney's Office did you focus on?
Well, we do a rotation, but at the end, my last year and a half, I was in homicide. So I was a homicide prosecutor.
Okay, good. Now we're to your office. Your office is considered one of the top, if not the top, U.S. Attorney jobs in the nation.
I think it's the top.
Well, you better. You have an office of about 350 lawyers normally.
Yeah, we're down close to 300. We're hurting right now.
Budget cuts.
That's right.
Sequestration.
Hiring freezes. Things are very difficult.
And you have a civilian staff, or not civilian, but you have a support staff of about the same number, 300 or so, 350?
It's down too. Yeah, we are.
So no one's here looking for a job tonight?
No, unfortunately. Times are hard right now.
Okay. You cover international crime, leaked national secrets, national corporate crime, plus corruption, and uniquely local crime in the district. It seems almost unmanageable. How does your brain focus on a day-to-day basis with such a big portfolio of things that you have to be, no other office in the country is like this.
Well, I got tremendous people, so I don't do it on my own. We got Vince Cohen here, who's my principal assistant, does a great job, and we have a whole string of managers. I got a Superior Court manager that, and then we have different divisions. We have homicide, we have sex offense, we have felony major crimes, we have misdemeanors, and we have managers at each one of these divisions that supervise.
But do you have like a staff meeting and they brief you on updates, or do they do it to Mr. Cohen and then he tells you?
Well, we have constant meetings. That's what we do all day. We're in meetings and we're getting briefed, and both on the criminal division side and the Superior Court side, certain cases obviously that are significant for various reasons. All the cases are significant, but certain cases we're more hands-on.
Given the international and national things that you do, what portion of the job of the U.S. Attorney's Office is prosecuting local crime?
I would say, I'd say at least 50%. Local crime. I mean, the local crimes. You have over 20,000 local crimes a year that are prosecuted by our office. Tremendous number of cases. Now, a lot of those cases aren't the most complex cases. The majority of those are misdemeanors, but you also have a large number of homicides, sexual assaults, assault with intent to kill, armed robberies. Robberies are a bigger problem, and so we're constantly meeting with our folks and making sure that we're putting our best foot forward in our prosecutions.
Political question, excuse me. And I'll remind you, if you have a suggestion for a question you'd like to be asked, please fill out the card and somebody will bring it up to me, and we'll get to them as soon as you bring them up. Do you think the city of Washington, the District of Columbia, should elect its own attorney general? You know, the council has, at this moment, postponed the election for 2014. There's a court suit by one of the candidates to make it happen. But I can't remember. I think your office testified in the hearings, maybe. What do you think the city should have an elected attorney general like the other states?
Well, I think it's important to have independence with the attorney general, and I think it's important for the people of D.C. to be able to elect an attorney general. I guess the issue, though, is you want to make sure you have candidates of high quality, and you've had some tremendous candidates or attorney generals in the past, like John Payton, who was a mentor of mine and a partner of mine over at Wilmer, and Bob Spagnoletti. And
spoke at your confirmation ceremony.
Correct, he did. So you have a tremendous legacy with that office. For whatever reason, when they were going to have an elected member, they were worried about, I think, the quality of the people, the candidates, and I think we got to figure out how to improve that. But it's important to have that independence.
I think it's John Payton who said at your confirmation that it's justice, not convictions, that you're looking for.
That's right.
Okay. I have some press releases that introduce Bill Miller, who's sitting in the audience.
That's right.
You know, I'm inundated with his press releases. And here's one today. Virginia man pleads guilty to weapons offense stemming from 4th of July incident at Freedom Plaza. I can't remember his name. That's the guy who cocked his rifle several times on camera. Foolish thing to do, right?
Yeah, Mr. Kokesh.
Maryland man sentenced to 5 years in prison for obstruction of justice. 2 district men plead guilty to 2011 murder of retired Vietnam veteran in Southeast Washington. District man sentenced to 29 years in prison for 2010 murder of his mother and assault on his younger brother. U.S. consulate official pleads guilty to receiving more than $3 million in bribes in exchange for visas. Former doctor at D.C. jail sentenced to 5 years in prison for sexually assaulting a male inmate in 2008. The TV business covers a lot of the crimes, but we often don't go to the end of the spectrum, and media often doesn't even report the end of the courtroom where people are sentenced to long terms. You mentioned some of the young guys serving 20 years. What role do you think the media plays in hampering justice by just focusing on the violent crimes rather than the end of the road when they go to court? Could we do a better job? Yes. But what difference would it make?
Well, I think it's important that you have to show there are consequences. And one of the things, again, we do justice. We're in the justice business, not the conviction business. But at the end of the day, if we're bringing a case against somebody, we have to be able to deliver the goods. One of the things I'm most proud of, our homicide section has been phenomenal over the last year. They got a 93% conviction rate. That's important. So when people commit those crimes, they have to understand there's going to be a price to pay, most likely, once we put together the case.
Do you ever personally get dismayed by, I mean, I have written a few newspaper columns about the horrific nature. One court, I don't remember the details, but two guys were trying to get cigarettes from some guy in Northeast Washington, and he didn't give them, and they started beating him up. He ran across the park. The two guys got there, and they beat him to death. Yeah. I mean, they're pretty horrific cases. How much do you think about it when you're not working?
Well, they are horrific. I mean, in this job, you see the worst of humanity, and you see the best of it. And we don't have to look any further back than the Navy Yard shooting with Aaron Alexis. And but at the same time, you also see people step up, and you see tremendous acts of bravery by normal citizens. And so that's just part of the job. But certainly, one of the things we want to impress upon these kids is you got to think before you act, because these crimes, once you do them, you're going to take somebody's father, mother, sister away from them, and there's no bringing that person back. And at that point, and this is what I would tell the kids, I don't want to hear any excuses. At that point, there's going to be a punishment that has to be served.
Do you think they get that? You talk to a lot of people who are in prison or in, but in the community, do you think they get that message? I mean, they see the violence. I mean, it irritates the hell out of me when I see these what we call makeshift memorials, and the teddy bears and the shoes and the flowers and the "We'll Remember You Forever" pictures on T-shirts and stuff. Everybody seems to rush together for those types of things, but they don't seem to rush together to keep that from happening.
Well, I think
I think what I'm trying to say is I think I'd be discouraged if I were seeing all the crimes that you do.
Well, I mean, you can't get discouraged, but again, you have a job to do, and you also see the very best. You see people, we have an award ceremony every year for victims of crime and people from the community who have done tremendous acts of bravery. And so you talked about a situation where somebody chased somebody across the street. There were situations this year where I gave an award to two gentlemen that chased down somebody who had sexually assaulted somebody, put at their own risk to their own lives, and then held the person until the police came. And you see people that again do tremendous acts of bravery, and so you also see the worst, the best in people. At the same time, you see the worst.
Police will tell you to not to confront people who have guns and knives and other threatening violence. You do see those cases of bravery. I know somebody was shot on U Street across the street from where my son has a place, and the guy slumped against the 7-Eleven, and my son said he ran over to see if the guy was all right. And I said, well, the guy could have come back to shot him and shot you too. I said, call 911 first. Don't rush into a violent situation.
No, it's true. It's dangerous, and that is usually what should happen. But there are, again, every situation, it happens so fast. You never know how somebody's going to react. And certain times, when you have no choice, you are going to have to reach out, because in certain situations, people they're gonna attack you no matter what, whether you give them what you want or whether you refuse. So it really depends on the situation. But all I'm saying is I'm in awe sometimes of the acts of bravery and courage that you see from citizens.
Let me go back to when I asked you about the elected attorney general. One person would like to know on that subject, do you think judges should be elected or appointed?
Definitely appointed.
Do you have judicial ambitions? Be a judge maybe as you get older and tired of this life? Or is that even proper?
I'm going to give you the politically correct answer. Say not at this time.
Okay. That'll be number 2 for not answering. Oh, look at this. I was afraid we weren't going to have any questions. In a moment, we're going to get to the corruption stuff, which brings some of the people in the room here. Oh, here's a good one. How seriously do you take prosecutorial misconduct? When was the last time you disciplined or fired a prosecutor? What's the procedure to file a complaint? I'm a journalist. Oh, it goes into its details. says he was convicted of felony in 2012. My wife's a graduate of Howard Law School. She put together a briefing book that show you're a U.S. prosecutor. Oh, this gets into the details. Anyway, tell me about this. How seriously do you take prosecutorial misconduct, and have you disciplined or fired a prosecutor?
We take it very seriously. I mean, that can be a resolution at the end of the day, termination. Oftentimes, though, there's things that can happen far short of that. It depends whether the misconduct is intentional or just negligent. And in these cases, one of the things it's very easy after the fact to say, oh, the prosecutor should have done this or should have done that. Most of the prosecutors they're working so hard. There's so much information. They're trying to do the right thing. And so we take it very seriously. We try to train everybody. But when mistakes happen, we do deal with it. And we make sure we deal with it in an appropriate fashion.
Pardon me while I take just a moment to read this. Some of these are very difficult to read. Some go back to print. Former Supreme Court Justice O'Connor is turning something the nation against. I'm sorry, I can't read this. Is a person in the audience?
Elected judiciary.
Okay. Well, we asked about that. He said they should be appointed. So you're done. I'll speak to you later about your penmanship. Is jury nullification acceptable?
No, it's unacceptable.
What is that?
So jury nullification is when you would, as a juror, refuse to deliberate on the facts of the case, refuse to participate in the jury process for some other reason. And recently there were flyers given out. It's unacceptable because in order for somebody to do that, they would have had to misrepresented their intentions to the court as they're sitting through the voir dire process. Our system requires individuals to participate, and if we're able to meet our burden of proving that case beyond a reasonable doubt, that you're able and willing to find somebody guilty. Because otherwise, somebody that committed a crime is going to be able to walk away free.
You convict people and then judges sentence them based on the federal guidelines.
Or the guidelines from Superior Court if it's
or Superior Court, right? But case that affects Capitol Hill, Thomas Maslin had his and his family's lives destroyed when he was hit in the head with a bat. This person says the offender received only 25 years. Did you think that was an acceptable sentence?
That was actually a long sentence for a case that didn't result in murder. We have people that have killed folks that have gotten 30 years. So that sentence was a stiff sentence. I think we probably asked for some even more time. That was a horrendous crime. And we actually had Thomas Maslin come speak at this award ceremony that I was telling you about. And
how's he doing?
Better. He's doing better. He's still not there yet, but he's working hard every day. And it's amazing. We talk about how these crimes affect individuals. His wife is just a tremendously strong and courageous woman, and she spoke about how her life was just turned upside down in an instant by the violence that was inflicted upon him. So he's doing better. But these crimes, it really depends on the situation. It's up to the judge. They have a very difficult job to do. They like to look across the spectrum, and they try to treat likely situated individuals similarly, but that sentence was not a light sentence by any means.
And under the federal system, the person has to serve the 25 years. Is that correct?
You do get good time credit, so it
no
varies.
parole.
Yeah, that's right.
Here's an interesting. I'm going to get these. Then we're going to get to this section while the reporters are here. What has your office done to address D.C.'s racial disparities in prison? I know in the marijuana matters, people are saying that 90% of the people who get arrested for marijuana are African-American males, and although marijuana is smoked across the city. But is there racial disparity in the prison?
Well, there is a racial disparity in the prisons, I think, when you look at the numbers. But it's important. You got two questions there. So marijuana, most people in prison are not in prison for marijuana, and the vast majority of individuals that are arrested for marijuana are treated through our diversionary programs. They're not even...
I was only including it because of the racial disparity of people who actually get charged.
Okay.
But is there anything that you as a prosecutor can do about that?
Well, I think that's the intervention prevention side, and that's why we're so passionate about getting out to areas most of these areas are impoverished areas where you have diverse populations, and trying to talk to them about making good decisions. That's why that's so important.
Who's keeping track of time? You just looked at your watch like that was a surprise. I just need to get some time cue so we don't keep him here beyond the hour.
We're at 7:35.
Well, no more than that. We didn't start till at least 7:15.
One thing too, Tom, just on that last question that I think is important is the administration's stance on and changing the laws on the crack cocaine disparity. I think that's important, so that, again, it's very important. People who commit similar misconduct should be treated similarly. And there was a huge disparity between crack and cocaine, and that, I think, was lending itself to that disparity. And it's still not 1-to-1, but at least it was there were efforts to equalize it to a greater degree.
Some of these questions are included, like marijuana legalization. You know, I'll do that, then we're going to go to this others, what all these are asking about. In the city, there are proposals to decriminalize marijuana, which will allow it to be treated like a civil fine if you have a certain amount on your person. There's also one proposal to make it legal, tax it, sell it, make money off of it. What is your own view as a person and as a prosecutor?
Well, it's something we're looking at right now. We're studying the council's proposal. I think there are a lot of problems associated with trying to decriminalize marijuana possession. Namely, one of them is if it's still a crime to sell marijuana, then how the guy's going to legally possess it without participating in at least part of an illegal operation. So
it just magically appears.
That's right. That's right. So there are a lot of issues there. I think there are a lot of issues with, if you want to decriminalize it and you're supposed to fine somebody, you know, most people don't even carry. There's no requirement you carry an ID. So how are you gonna enforce this statute? So there are a lot of questions. We're looking at that, and we'll be communicating with the council about the proposal. But obviously, I know this is a shift that's taking place across the country. And I think we just have to be careful and make sure we make informed decisions.
Several states are moving much farther ahead on marijuana, and of course there's medical marijuana also. Is there something distinct legally about the city has passed medical marijuana, and places are now opening? Is that an issue for you, or your concerns there at all?
There were concerns, and but we were very clear, and the department's been very clear, that we're going to focus our resources on those who possess marijuana illegally and not those who use it for medicinal purposes. So medical marijuana, as long as you have these centers that are growing the marijuana, and DC has a very tight law. There are a lot of restrictions about who can grow, how much marijuana can be grown for medicinal purposes. So that's in a different category than what we're talking about when we talk about decriminalizing marijuana generally.
Now let's do a little corruption talk.
All right.
I'm tired of being nice. No. Speaking before the American Bar Association in 2010, which is right after you took office, you said, quote, "Public corruption is our bread and butter." You told the Washingtonian in September of last year that, quote, "The people of the city deserve ethical, strong leadership." What did you mean by bread and butter, and where does your strong revulsion to public corruption come from?
Well, the business of D.C. is politics, and so corruption. If you go down the laundry list of our cases, you're going to see over the last 4 years what we call the 5 Aces operation, the largest federal contracting and big rigging scheme in our nation's history. Over $1 billion in contract, over $30 million in bribes involving officials with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. You're going to see. Obviously, we know about the 3 councilmen who have been convicted of felonies. We know about the chief of staff to another councilman that's been convicted. We know about now it's 2 congressmen that have been convicted. You're here in D.C., and so corruption is the name of the game here in D.C.
Bread and butter.
It's bread and butter, and so we have to be very good at it. I think we've had over 125 public corruption convictions in the last 3.5 years, and it's critical and it's a priority because you have to have ethical leadership. When you don't have that, when you don't have people who believe in the system of government, who believe that officials are on the take, it tears at the fabric of our democracy. It really does. People lose trust in the system.
I was at UDC Monday night. There was a forum on prosecution and corruption, and one person in the audience stood up and said that he was sick of the culture of corruption that's in the city of Washington. One of the attorneys, well, actually two, Billy Martin and Fred Cook, who were on the panel, said that that was an unfair characterization, that there is not a culture of corruption in the city government or in the city, that it taints and all the people, the 30-something thousand people who work in the city government, the people who are involved. Is there a culture of corruption? One person said they thought that was a racial disparagement of the city. But how do you characterize the culture of corruption in your own mind at this city? And the people are trying to do a good job, but often can't.
Well, there are a lot of hardworking officials and public servants in this city and obviously in the federal government. I think you can't ignore the fact that you have had 3 council members plead guilty when you talk about D.C. politics, but at the same time,
my next question comes up.
I judge those individuals based on their own conduct. You can't make sweeping generalizations. Chicago has had a lot of corruption problems. Louisiana's had a lot of corruption problems. Detroit, my home city, has had a lot of corruption problems. So you can't make these sweeping generalizations. Corruption happens everywhere. All you can do is try to attack it.
You've mentioned the 3 council members, Harry Thomas and former Chairman Kwame Brown and Michael Brown. They're all felons now, right? Correct. Thomas and Michael Brown were basically caught red-handed taking public money. But Kwame Brown was not convicted for misusing his public office or for his campaign violation, except for the misdemeanor, but lying on his mortgage applications about his income. Rather stupid by a boat, but that's an editorial comment. If it's a felony, but his supporters contend that other people wouldn't have been treated so harshly, wouldn't have been forced to lose their job. They would have just been convicted of it. What's your view of that? This is some people say this is, compared to Harry Thomas and Michael Brown, who took public money, this is wasn't that serious.
Anytime you have the chairman of the council lying on a document to obtain money to buy a boat, that's
forging the document.
Forging a document, that's a problem. You got to remember how the Kwame Brown investigation took place. This was an investigation he called for, proclaiming his innocence with respect to something else. We then discover a crime in the midst of our investigation. You can't ignore that. And we bring mortgage fraud cases all the time against individuals who, from all parts of this city. So again, we treated him similarly. At the end of the day, we didn't ask for any significant jail time or anything like that. And so he's not doing a number of years in prison because we recognize it's not the crime of the century, but it is a crime, and it's a crime by an elected public official, and so it's important to bring those cases.
Had control over significant amounts of money and
right.
documents that
That's right.
could have also forged those. I don't know why. Maybe because of the next question I'm going to ask.
Uh-oh. I better take a drink too.
No, it's just allergies, and I haven't taken my allergy medicine tonight. Okay, several people connected to the Vincent Gray 2010 campaign have pleaded guilty to charges in connection with the infamous shadow campaign. You've called that shadow campaign one that, quote, deceived the voters of this city. Everyone asked me, when will this investigation be done?
I don't
Comes
know.
the third one.
I don't know. Again, we cannot talk about specifics of that investigation, but I can tell you this. We know the situation. We know there's a sense of urgency. But you, Tom, and I know Joanne's in here, and she knows this, you got to understand the situation when you have all these challenges and obstacles. So what you know publicly right now is you know individuals associated with that campaign have shredded documents. You know individuals have lied to the FBI. This is what people have pled guilty to. You know that individuals have tried to send people out of the country not to talk to us. So that's what you know about some of the obstacles. And now you know, obviously there's an issue, a dust up over some privileged documents. So that's another obstacle. And then you have some of the same people who are probably saying hurry up, may also be involved in not coming forward with information we need so we could hurry up. we're trying to move as quickly as we can, but we're not going to go away just because there are obstacles put in our way.
People have may be aware that there was this dust-up with the D.C. Attorney General, Irv Nathan, about he was offering to give up government documents through a judge to protect the client privilege that he says exists. You've been asking for documents. Somebody who supports his side of the view said that, well, you know, the Justice Department has been trying to protect government documents in the Fast and Furious case, and he's just, you know, Irvin Nathan is just doing that for his client, the government of the city.
There's absolutely
I don't even think we can get into the details of this, but you want those documents. Can you say why you want those documents?
I can't say why. All I can say is what I've said publicly is there are documents that the city's claiming privilege on that we think are highly relevant to our investigation and to our inquiry. We'd like to see them. We don't think there's a privilege under the law. We're trying to work with the Attorney General. I know he's offered what he said is a compromise, but that compromise is basically litigation. And so what I've urged him to do, I mean, that's what we get if we go to court and we litigate it. What I've urged him to do is to rethink that position and provide the documents, and hopefully he'll do that.
Have you ever said the name Jeffrey Thompson, or can you say anything about that person at all?
I'm not going to say anything about that individual.
You just want some corporate records and some government records without telling me who.
That's right.
All right. Well, you know, the 24 campaign is underway. I know that Michael Brown was trying to make a comeback in his political career, and he ran for that April special election last year. Then he abruptly resigned from that, saying that his mother was sick. Other people have reported that he was of course already involved in the scandal of taking money and stuff like that. The deadline for the primary to get into the primary April 1st is January 2nd to turn in petitions. Is there any pressure, public or otherwise, to wrap up the investigation of the Gray 2010 campaign so that he can run for re-election if he's not going to be facing any charges? Does the political calendar affect your prosecution calendar?
It cannot affect our prosecution calendar. Again, there are these challenges that we have with the prosecution where we can't control the timing. I will say we're aware of it, and when we can move, we try to take that into account because we know it's important for the voters to have some sense of closure and to know what's going on. We're sensitive to that, but at the same time, there's nothing we can do. We can't just wrap up an investigation when we're still in the midst of gathering information to make an intelligent decision. And it's important because the people of this city want us to get it right. We try to be obviously very proactive in our investigations, but our job is to make the right decision. We need the information to make the right decision.
I was telling someone about all these documents, the millions of documents that you've been trying to get, that as I understand it, the prosecutor's office has a pretty good idea of what the overall beach looks like of this case, but you're trying to get every grain of sand you can before you take action.
Well, you got the highest standard in criminal law out there, which is beyond a reasonable doubt. And so you can have an idea of what's going on, but I'm charged with proving it. And to prove it, I need documents. I can't just rely on what somebody tells me, which again goes to my dispute with the Attorney General, Mr. Nathan. He says, well, I'm telling you, okay, I can't rely on that. I've had people tell me a lot of things. You get documents, you get communications, that's when you really get to the heart of things.
Consider this a hypothetical. If an elected leader of a city were trying to decide to run for re-election, not too much snickering, but decided not to run for re-election because that elected official thought the prosecutor might go easy on him if he weren't running for re-election, but he'd get to finish out his term. Would that affect your judgment on whether to bring charges against someone that they're willingly withdraw from office, say, I'm not going to run again, and I'm going to go off to private life, achieving one of your goals of getting crooked people out of office? But, or if that person announced for re-election and said, heck with the prosecutor, I'm going to run for re-election, I don't care, he's got nothing on me. Does that affect any of your judgment? If someone decides, I'm stepping voluntarily down, not resign, but not run again?
Our judgment is made.
You over there can't see the way he's looking at me. I just want you to know that.
No, it's based on the facts. Our judgment, our decisions are going to be based on the facts and whether or not we think an individual violated the criminal law.
One of the mayors, but the current mayor of this city, one of his staffers came up to me and was just angry as hell at me because that's something I had written, and said, it's like a personal attack on you. He said, this prosecutor has nothing on Mayor Gray, and if he had something, he'd bring it. That goes back to the original question. You're just doing your job, right?
Well, you're just doing your job, and I mean, you got 4 people associated with the mayoral campaign. Again, I'm not talking about any individuals who have pled guilty to felonies. It's not like we've been looking at this for 3 years and there's no there. I mean, there's there, and we're trying to gather information, and we're trying to get documents, and we're trying to talk to people. And you've also had this obstruction effort. And so, you know, people can say that. I don't put a lot of credence in that.
You're not personally offended by that.
No, I'm not personally offended by it.
The council has made, and we'll wrap this up, the council has made some changes in the ethics laws, more reporting requirements. They've stepped back from disallowing corporate contributions. What changes have you suggested to the council that they have not yet done that you think would toughen up the laws for ethics in the city? Or do you have some ideas you'd like to throw out tonight?
No, I mean, I think at the appropriate time, and I know there have been some ethical changes. I don't think we've really weighed in too heavily on that. I think we need to focus on our investigation. But I mean, I would say common sense dictates a lot in these situations. And generally speaking, you have to make sure you look at the conflict of interest regulations. You have to make sure that people aren't able to benefit personally, or their family members benefit personally from relationships for the city. And I think that's important. So I haven't thought a whole lot about specific legislation, but people should keep that in mind. And as well as people should keep in mind, if you do have issues personally with your own finances and things like that, you need to make sure you can put that in order before you're going to be running the finances of an entire city. I think that's just, when I'm a voter, those are things I take into account. I think people should think about that.
You actually prompted another question, and then it went away while I was listening to your answer.
Good. It's the effect.
See if I can bring it back here. Oh, yeah, now I know what it is. December next month will be the 4th anniversary of your nomination. I checked most U.S. attorneys.
Nomination?
I mean, when you were nominated to be the.
Okay.
No, not for running for office. I presume you're not interested in ever running for public office?
Not at this time, no.
Oh. Wait, that's not at this time. That's
no,
new.
I have no view of running for public, no feelings about running for public office.
Okay, but you're coming up on your 4th year. I guess February would be, right? February 11th. Nice ceremony. You'll be 4 years as a U.S. attorney. That's getting to the long end of the usual time. People are 3 years, maybe 4. Now, you were a fairly successful lawyer at, what was it, Wilmer, Cutler?
I was at WilmerHale.
WilmerHale.
Pickering, Hale and Dorr. It's a long name.
And you were a partner.
I was.
And well, we all know people in that kind of make a lot of money. And what is the U.S. attorney makes? Is it still about $160,000 or something?
$155,000.
$155,000.
So it's still a lot of money.
Well, it's a lot of money for some people. How long do you think you'll be U.S. attorney? Do you have I know you're not going to announce any kind of plan to retire, but most U.S. attorneys don't stay but 3 to 4 years at most. I know of none that stayed 5 or 6.
I think you stay as long as you can. I love this job. This is the greatest job to get up. I mean, you've read some of the press releases. Every day I come into work and I may be dealing with a homicide in a certain part of the city. I may be dealing with an international terrorism matter. I may be dealing with a public corruption matter, a financial crime. And the whole mission is to do the right thing and to try to help people. So this is a fantastic job, and you're surrounded by phenomenal colleagues. So the short answer is I'm going to do it for as long as I can.
Okay. Well, you've talked about how you're, in fact, some of your assistant U.S. attorneys have talked about when you say people are working night and day and weekend hours, that you're not just saying it. They actually do.
Yeah, they work very hard. I'll go back to the office tonight, and it'll be pretty full.
That's what I was going to ask. How does this come back around to your personal life? You started as a young man from Philadelphia and then Detroit. How much of this is in your life? I mean, what do you do when you're not carrying that shiny badge that you should be carrying? I mean, how do you do? What's your private life like in terms of things you like to do? Not where people can surprise you at a football game or something, but how do you relax from a job like this?
I mean, I think I told you I got 3 boys. I love spending time with them. I love watching them do just about anything, quite frankly. And So I spend a lot of time when I'm not at work with my family, with my friends, socializing, just the same sort of thing you probably do.
Watch a lot of TV. Do you get to work early in the morning, stay late? Mayor Gray, not to mention anybody you're interested in, but Mayor Gray, talks about how he goes to 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and then goes home, and then he comes back early in the morning for events. Is your day that long?
Day's long, but I'm not a morning person. I get up early at home, and try to help with getting the boys ready for school. But I'm more of a night person. Mr. Cohen is the early morning person, so he's the early riser, and I kind of shut it down in the evening.
And for exercise, because the biggest issue in this country is not crime, but the fact that 60–75% of us are in bad health. Right. What do you do for health reasons?
Well, I try to run a few times a week. I used to ride my bike a lot in Rock Creek Park with the family, and the thing about DC, there's so many things to do to stay in shape. So I try to get some exercise.
I have no big boffo question to ask you at the end, but I'll ask you, is there something you thought about saying tonight? You talked about the community work you do, which you're very proud of. And then let the record show I came to that very early on to get it out of the way. Well, is there anything I didn't ask you about that you were hoping you could talk about tonight?
No, I think the office is doing well. I think the assistants we have in the office, I think, are making this city proud each and every day. They're doing a terrific job. They're working hard, and our job, our mission, is to serve all the people and be accountable, and I think we're doing a good job of it.
And without naming any names, have you sent out any target letters lately?
I'm not going to answer that.
Okay, I wanted to get up to at least 5 I'm not going to answer. All right, so I don't have any other questions up here. Can we just take one more question from the audience? But it has to be a short one, and it can't be a speech.
And you're going to have to repeat it, Tom.
Okay.
I had the privilege of serving on a grand jury a couple of years ago, and I was stunned by how many of the cases that were brought forward to the grand jury to consider who in charge of committed while on release. Why are so many people who are charged with crimes still running around our streets and committing more crimes?
Did you hear that question? Oh, I'm not sure.
So it's basically, why are so many people who have committed crimes not locked up and they're still on release and able to commit more crimes is what he's asking. And I think it's part of it is you just have to understand the process. So if an individual is arrested tomorrow or tonight for something, depending on what the case is, he could be held until trial. But in the vast majority of cases, if he's not a risk of flight or a danger to the community, based on his record and other things, he will be released under certain conditions. Now, when he's out, you may see him back in the community, and that's just how the system is set up. It'll take a while to go to trial, and then when he goes to trial, if he's convicted, then we may ask for a sentence. But again, the judge may decide not to. The judge is going to consider a lot of different factors. When you shouldn't see people out, or normally you won't see people out if they commit certain crimes where there's a presumption of dangerousness to the community. So if somebody's committing an armed robbery, and a violent assault, those folks will usually be held over to until the trial, and then if they're convicted at trial, they'll receive a more significant sentence.
Okay, I do have the Boffo finish question. Have you ever been the victim of a crime?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. I mean, not somebody stealing your pencils at school, but there's car theft or anything like that you can say.
Victim of theft, obviously. I've been. At younger days, involved in altercations from time to time, but I guess maybe that was more of a tit for tat. But there've been certain situations so I know what it's like. I've had family members that have been victims of crime.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, would please thank Mr. Machen for being here tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.